Are you blind? Get out of my way! I'm so sorry. Who do you think you are to stand near me on my wedding day?
In every person's life, there comes a moment when a single small action is enough to change everything. That day, Amara walked into the wedding hall wearing a flawless white gown, surrounded by applause, music, and the admiring eyes of hundreds of guests. She believed. She was standing at the very peak of her life. But then, because of one spilled glass of wine, because of one elderly server bowing her head to apologize, Amara did something she would never forget for the rest of her life. She jumped to her feet. Her finger shot forward, pointing straight at the woman before her. Her voice was cold sharp as a blade. "Do you even know what day this is?" The server trembled. Her wrinkled hands clutched her apron tightly. She whispered, barely audible, "I'm sorry, my child. I didn't mean to." But Amara didn't hear her. All she felt was embarrassment, annoyance, and wounded pride. Slap! The sound echoed through the luxurious hall. The music stopped. Laughter froze on every face. The woman staggered. A thin line of blood appeared on her uniform. The entire room fell silent, and at that exact moment, the groom turned around. His face went pale. His eyes widened, as if he had just seen the one thing he feared most in his life. He stepped forward, his voice shaking. "Amara, do you know who you just hit?" Before the bride could answer, the truth fell like a hammer. "That was my mother." One single sentence, and the entire wedding collapsed. And that is where the story begins. You're watching Afritalas at TK, where African stories reveal the truths we often learn too late. Amina grew up in poverty. Not the romantic kind of poverty from fairy tales, but the kind that smelled of sweat and red dust, the kind that made hunger claw at your stomach every night. Her childhood was tied to a rusted tin roof house, where every rainy season meant running around with bowls and buckets to catch the water leaking through the ceiling. She wore the same pair of plastic sandals for 3 straight years, worn so thin her bare feet pressed directly against the burning ground. At school, Amina always sat at the back of the classroom. Not because she was a poor student, but because she didn't want anyone to see the frayed shoulders of her uniform, didn't want anyone to smell clothes that never quite dried in the rain. Some days, she pretended to oversleep just to avoid going to school, simply because she didn't have money for lunch. The whispers followed her like a shadow. "That girl is really poor. Her family probably has nothing but debt. Don't hang around her, it's embarrassing." Amina learned to lower her head very early in life. But inside her, every word of contempt became a shard of broken glass. And from those shards, a silent vow began to take shape. One night, during a power outage, Amina sat in the darkness, hugging her knees and whispering to herself, "If one day I become rich, I will never let anyone look down on me again." She didn't say it in anger. She said it in despair. From that day on, Amina studied relentlessly. She worked without rest. She believed money didn't just buy comfort, it bought silence from those who once mocked her. Many years later, Amina was no longer the girl sitting at the back of the classroom. She walked into rooms filled with expensive perfume, wearing clothes she once only dared to admire through glass displays. Her name appeared on guest lists for parties where, in the past, she would have been chased away just for standing nearby. And then she met Tun. He was polished, composed, the only son of a wealthy and respected family, the kind of man every woman dreamed of. When Tun proposed, Amina cried. Not out of happiness, but because, in that moment, she believed she had finally defeated her past. The wedding was held at the most luxurious hotel in the city. Crystal chandeliers, fresh flowers, glowing lights. Everything was so perfect it left Amina dizzy. Yet one thing unsettled her. Tun's mother. Whenever he spoke about her, his voice softened, grew restrained. There was no boasting, no loud pride, only a deep, unwavering respect. And that more than anything, made Amina uncomfortable. She was afraid. Afraid of facing a woman who might see straight through the past she was trying to bury. Afraid of the eyes of a mother who had lived through more than money could ever conceal. So Amina said it plainly to Tund. "I don't want to meet your mother." The words sounded light, but behind them stood a wall of pride. Tund was silent for a long time. Then he said only one thing. "My mother is a very special woman." Amina didn't ask any further. In her mind, old images surfaced automatically. Faded clothes, rough hands, a body bent low before life. She told herself she had come too far to allow the past to return, disguised as a poor mother. In the world Amina had built for herself, there was one cold, unyielding rule: poor women equals inferior. The woman who had been slapped lowered her head in apology. She didn't cry, she didn't protest. She merely tilted her body slightly, as if she had long grown accustomed to life's collisions. Her server's uniform was old, the fabric faded from too many washes. Her hair, streaked with gray, was neatly tied into a bun, though a few strands had fallen across her forehead from the slap. Her thin hands trembled. Fingers calloused from years of hard labor struggled to hold onto the shattered wine tray, as if letting go might cause everything else in her life to fall apart with it. The music in the ballroom continued to play, but in that moment it felt as though all sound had been drained from the air. There was only a heavy silence and the gaze of hundreds of eyes fixed in one direction. Amina stood there. She felt no shame, no fear, only the wounded fury of her pride, burning fiercely in her chest. She looked down at the woman, as one might look at a stain that had no right to exist in the flawless portrait of her life. Her voice was sharp and cold, each word slicing through the air like a blade. "Who allowed you to work here? Do you really think you belong at my wedding?" The question didn't need an answer, it was a sentence. The woman shrank inward. Her shoulders sagged, as if an invisible weight had just been added to her back. She opened her mouth, but it took a long moment to find the breath to speak. Her voice was so soft that without paying attention, one might miss it beneath the distant music. "I'm sorry, my child." Just 2 words, but not the apology of a server. It was the apology of someone long accustomed to bowing, of someone who had spent a lifetime saying sorry so that another could walk through life standing tall. Tund stood frozen. His entire body stiffened, as though all the blood had been drained from his heart. He couldn't hear the music. He couldn't hear the murmurs of the guests. He heard only those 2 words echoing in his mind, over and over again, like an old memory suddenly awakened. "I'm sorry, my child." He looked at her face. A face marked with lines that felt painfully familiar, wrinkles not carved by age, but by years of endurance. He listened to that voice. The same voice that had lulled him to sleep during nights without electricity, that had whispered prayers when he burned with fever in the middle of a rainy night. He looked into those eyes that had always gazed at him with unconditional tenderness, eyes that had watched him from behind classroom doors, from outside school gates, from the shadows of ceremonies she had never dared to enter. Now those eyes were fixed on the crystal-polished floor, avoiding her son's gaze, as if she feared that even a single moment of eye contact would shatter every secret. A chill ran down Tund's spine. His breath caught in his throat. Old images tore through the present. Those hands had once bandaged his wounds. Those shoulders had once carried the weight of the world so he could stand tall today. And now those same hands trembled before him. That same woman was being humiliated at his own wedding. His heart felt as though it were being crushed. Tund stepped onto the stage. Each of his footsteps echoed clearly through the vast hall, as if even the marble floor itself were holding its breath. The music stopped. Laughter and chatter died away. Hundreds of eyes turned toward the groom, the man who should have been smiling with happiness. But Tund's face had gone pale. His jaw was clenched. His hands trembled, no matter how hard he tried to hide it. His voice broke as he spoke, hoarse and shattered. "Stop it, Amina. Her name rang through the elegant space like a blade cutting straight through the air. Amina spun around. She had never seen Tund like this. No gentleness. No calm. Only pain. Compressed to its breaking point. Tund raised his hand. His fingers shook as he pointed directly at the woman standing bowed among the shattered glass. "That is my mother," the words fell. Not like thunder, but like the sky collapsing. The room froze. Some guests stared wide-eyed. Others covered their mouths. A few turned away, as if unable to witness any more. Amina stood frozen. The blood drained from her face in an instant. "No, that's not possible." Her voice cracked, faint, like a child yanked abruptly from a beautiful dream. Tund swallowed hard. He looked at Amina, but his words were not meant for her alone. He spoke to the entire hall. To the past. "My mother was once a teacher," his voice trembled. "She taught all day, then worked nights. When the money wasn't enough, she sold her small house." Each sentence unleashed another memory. "She sold her wedding ring, the only thing my father ever left behind, just to pay my tuition." Amina took a step back. The hem of her wedding dress brushed against the broken glass, but she felt no pain. She washed dishes, mopped floors, did whatever work she could as long as I could stay in school. Tund's voice caught. He took a deep breath, as if without it, he would collapse right there. "So that today, I could stand here." As the man standing beside you, the hall was deathly silent. Tund turned toward the woman, his mother. She still kept her head lowered, her shoulders trembling, tears falling onto the cold stone floor. "My mother asked to work as a server at this wedding." He slowed his speech, each word carved into the air. "Just to see her son get married. She didn't ask to sit in the front row. She didn't ask to be introduced." His mother broke down. The sobs she had suppressed for years finally burst free. "I didn't dare say I was the groom's mother," she cried. "I was afraid. Afraid of embarrassing you." Those words ripped through the hearts of everyone who still had a conscience. Amina looked at the woman before her. No longer a server. No longer a poor old woman. Only a mother who had sacrificed her entire life so her child could stand here today. Amina's legs gave way. She could no longer stand. Her white wedding dress spread across the cold marble floor. Amina collapsed to her knees. Amina's hands trembled as she clutched her wedding dress. The once pure white fabric now crumpled in her icy fingers, as if the image she had spent her entire life building were collapsing piece by piece. She no longer heard the murmurs of the guests. She no longer saw the glittering crystal lights. Everything before her blurred, leaving only the woman standing in front of her, the mother she had just slapped. Amina fell to her knees. Her knees struck the cold stone floor. A sharp pain shot through her body, but it was nothing compared to the agony tearing through her chest. Her voice shattered. I'm sorry, Mother." The words, "I'm sorry," came too late, like rain falling after the fields have already burned dry. The woman raised a hand to her face. At the corner of her mouth, a thin line of blood still lingered from the slap. She wiped it gently with her sleeve, a movement so familiar it was heartbreaking, as if she had done it countless times before. Then she smiled, a very gentle smile, soft, free of blame, free of resentment. "It's all right, my child," she said quietly. "I'm used to it." Those words didn't echo loudly, but they fell like a blade. Not into flesh, but straight into Amina's heart. "I'm used to it. Used to being forgotten. Used to standing in the background. Used to sacrificing without being named. Used to receiving pain and still having to smile." Amina broke down in tears. For the first time in her life, not because she was being looked down upon, but because she realized she had become the very person she once hated most. She lifted her head, searching for Tund. He stood there. He didn't step forward. He didn't scold her. He didn't pull her into his arms like he had during past arguments. He simply stood still, like someone who had just lost something that could never be recovered. Tund raised his hand. Slowly, decisively, he slipped the wedding ring from his finger. The ring fell into his palm, cold and heavy. His voice lowered. Not loud, but each word felt carved in stone. If you could slap my mother today. He paused. Then one day, you could trample on me too. Amina shook her head frantically. Tears blurred her perfectly made-up face. No, Tund, I'm not like that. But her words had no way back. Tund looked at her one last time. There was no anger left in his eyes. Only a disappointment so deep it needed no shouting. He turned to his mother, gently draped a coat over her shoulders, and helped her walk away. No one stopped them. No one dared. The music did not resume. The wedding did not continue. Guests quietly left the hall, carrying with them a story they would tell for years to come. The white bouquets slowly wilted under the lights. The 3-tier wedding cake remained untouched, never cut. Amina's wedding dress lay spread across the floor, but there was no one left to hold it. The wedding ended without a bride. A few months later, the city slipped into the rainy season. The rain was no longer loud like it had been on the wedding day. It fell steadily, gently, as if time itself had learned to speak more softly after so much pain. Amina stood in front of an old apartment building. The walls were stained with damp patches, the stairway narrow and dark, the familiar musty smell of places life had long forgotten. In her hands, she held a simple bouquet of white flowers. Not wedding flowers, not expensive flowers. Just ordinary blooms held in trembling hands. Many times, Amina had turned away and left. Many times, she had stood in the rain for hours only to lack the courage to step onto this threshold. Because apologizing is the hardest thing for someone who once lived by pride. She took a deep breath. Then she knocked. The old wooden door opened. The woman stood there, no server's uniform now. Just a simple dress, gray hair neatly tied back. Her face looked a little thinner, but her eyes were as gentle as ever. When Amina saw those eyes, every wall she had built inside herself collapsed. She set the bouquet down on the ground, then she knelt. Not the kneeling of fear, but the kneeling of someone who had finally understood how deeply wrong she had been. The concrete floor was freezing cold, but Amina didn't move. Her voice trembled. I don't expect to be forgiven, she said, tears falling onto her hands. I only hope you'll give me a chance to become a better person. The words weren't polished, they weren't poetic, but they were the rawest truth she had ever spoken. The woman froze. She looked at Amina for a long time. No reproach, no judgment. Just the gaze of a mother who had seen enough suffering to understand that some mistakes don't need further punishment. She bent down. The hands that had once trembled at the wedding now gently rested on Amina's shoulders. Stand up, my child. Amina looked up. Tears blurred everything. The woman wiped the rain or the tears from her cheeks, slow and familiar, as if she had done it all her life. She shook her head slightly. I'm not angry. Her voice was soft, but steady. I'm only sad. She paused for a moment, as if to make sure every word that followed was not meant to wound again, but to remind. I'm only sad because you forgot that everyone was once the child of a mother. The words fell gently. Not like a reproach, not like a lesson. Just a simple truth that people often forget when they stand too high above others. Amina broke down in tears. No longer tears of regret, but tears of awakening. Outside, the rain continued to fall. But inside that small room, for the first time in a long while, a heart began to heal. Some slaps leave no mark on the skin, but they leave scars that last a lifetime. Never look down on someone just because you're standing higher than them today, because the person you despise the most may be the very one who sacrificed their entire life so you could stand where you are. Before success or failure, we were all once the child of a mother. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to Afrital as a TK to continue walking with us through African stories that carry lessons, awakenings, and deep human values. Leave a comment and let us know where in the world you're watching Afritalis at TK from. Afritalis at TK, where every story leaves something worth remembering.